Welcome, Shane.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for that introduction, Carolyn. I thought tonight we would have a frank and open discussion on how to make our meetings fun, but still keep them serious, or not serious, but a positive learning experience. So one of the concerns I have is that lots of meetings are really fun, pretty darn relaxed, and it's yeah, everybody knows everybody and it's a good time. But the problem with that is if you have guests coming in, they look at it at your meeting and they say, well, I'm here to learn and improve my public speaking skills and leadership skills. This is a little too relaxed for me. So thanks, but no thanks. I'll move on. And so on. So I thought tonight we would have an open and honest discussion on how to hold a top quality club meeting, not be too serious, and keep the wow factor in.
Hey, Shane, this is Tom Dowd. I have a quick question relating to this topic. Very interesting and can't wait for the discussion. But my question is, what prompted this? Did you have guests come back and provide feedback to us saying that the meeting wasn't what they had expected?
No, it's just it was a great idea. So I thought we would pursue it.
No, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't in crisis mode, and several people had mentioned having too much fun at meetings.
It's not to go off topic, but yeah, it's one of the key issues of Toastmasters International.
Okay.
Your brand, the Toastmasters International brand, is the club itself, the club quality, the club meeting itself. And as we go forward from now, you'll hear more from Toastmasters International on how we need to maintain or provide the best possible club meeting without it being dry and sobering, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm struggling.
Yeah, that makes sense. In understanding the WOW campaign that's going on, it fits in nicely. So now I understand the alignment. Thanks.
Shane.
Yes.
It's Heather, if I can speak to that.
Hi, Heather.
Tom, as well, you mentioned the Wow Factor project, and so that's part of it. That's part of the emphasis that World Headquarters is, or the organization is putting on the importance of quality clubs. I mean, worldwide, we have the largest number of clubs that are 12 and under that we've ever had. And
oh, wow. Okay.
So, something needs to be done about that. And at the training that the district team and all the district teams had at the International Convention in August, immediate past President Balraj talked to the leaders about that and saying that traditionally we put 80% of our effort in club growth and 20% of our effort in ensuring that we have quality clubs. And he was suggesting we should switch that so that 20% of the effort is in club growth and 80% is ensuring quality clubs. If we have quality clubs that people can walk in and say, wow, this is something I want to be part of, our clubs are going to grow naturally. And the club growth is going to end up happening anyway out of that. So what we need are strong clubs that represent who we are well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, Carolyn, can you share your screen?
In 2 seconds. I'd like to ask Heather a question. Heather, when you were at that meeting, or in any of the other meetings of that caliber, has anybody addressed or come up with any ideas about how we reduce the 44% of losing members, and why are we losing such large percentage?
Well, that's part of the reason for the focus on quality clubs. I mean, my own belief is that for the vast majority of people who leave, they leave because they don't feel their needs are being met. People will tell you things such as, oh, I don't have time. We make time for the things that are important to us. So generally speaking, when people say we don't have time, what they're saying is this is no longer important. And the reason it's not important in most cases is because they don't feel their needs are being met. So we need to find ways to ensure that all members feel that their needs are being met. Well, at the same time, it is an enjoyable process for everybody, but it's got to be that mixture of people. They enjoy themselves, but they also feel that they're learning, that they're growing on an ongoing basis. And I think that we, as an organization, we have not traditionally, we've kind of talked about it, but we really haven't focused on it. We kind of use the Distinguished Club Program as the proxy for that, which isn't necessarily always an accurate proxy for it. So I think the whole business now with things such as the Wow Factor Project and everything is showing that we have to find ways to make sure that we have quality clubs so that we are going to retain, because quality clubs will help us recruit new members. It will also help us retain members. So we have to do things to ensure that all members are involved, all members feel that they have the opportunity to be involved, that they feel that the club executive understand what it is that they're trying to do. We make a lot of assumptions when somebody joins, I think. I think we tend to assume that everybody's joining for the same reason. They want to become a better speaker. But that's not the case. And often we're not finding out why somebody is really joining. And if we don't do that, then how do we know that we're meeting their needs? So,
and Heather, it's a really interesting point, because it's not just why people are joining, it's why people are staying and why people are leaving. And when you say needs are not being met, the first thing that came to my mind is to revisit some of the clubs that I've been involved in the state of Maine, and the ones that have struggled. There's a common denominator in a lot of those cases, and that's the leadership team of that particular club is probably not listening to the needs of that individual, or it's falling on deaf ears, or the person doesn't feel supported in what they're trying to achieve, for themselves.
Or the leadership team doesn't know what they should be doing because they haven't gotten training.
Good point.
Generally speaking, clubs are far more likely to achieve distinguished and have a higher membership if they have their 4 or more officers trained at each session than those clubs that don't. There is about only about a third of the clubs that don't have 4 or more officers trained make distinguished, whereas about 2/3 of the clubs that do make distinguished. And well, in our district, on average, clubs still experience, like overall, there is a loss in membership. There is less of a loss in membership in the clubs where their officers are trained versus those that aren't. So, in addition to the club quality, part of it is ensuring that we have strong training and get the officers out for the training so that they understand what their roles are. We have to ensure that we're training people on what you should be doing when you're president or VPE or whatever your role is, and not just thinking, oh, well, they can read it in the book and we don't have to provide the specific training on it. You know, we do have to provide that training. We have to ensure that they understand that, but we need, you know, our numbers have gone down in our district. Our numbers, percentage of officers trained has gone down over the last number of years. So, you know, again, we find ways to bring that up. And that in turn should help with club quality and retaining those members. You know, it's all tied in together.
How much of the WOW program is gonna spread down into the TLI type training? And the reason why I ask is I look back on the last couple of years of TLIs, and you have very similar topics, and a lot of it is about grow, but it's not necessarily around the quality type meeting. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I think you'll see more with the TLIs focused on the quality clubs, and I think that has varied somewhat by division as to whether that's been done, but you know, I do expect that there will be more focus on that in all districts to ensure that, because you know it's a problem that all districts are facing. It's certainly not something that's unique to us, and it's something that everybody's trying to find the best way. And you know, I've been trying to get other districts to share what they're doing in this regard so that it can be shared with our district and we can take advantage of great ideas that other ones come up with as well.
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a really interesting point where you say using the DCP as a proxy, because I think we land on the numbers and we start talking about the numbers, but we may not necessarily. I'm thinking back where I think I can do a better job as my club president. It's not just share the numbers, but talk about how we accomplished what we did so far, what we still need to do. So maybe a little bit more on the how side behind it. That was a good point.
Yeah, I just see Linda's comment there about the TLIs, and I know, Linda, certainly here in DNF, we always encourage anyone to come to the TLI. It is hard to get them to come. And one of the challenges that we face is you can't get the list of new officers from road headquarters until after we do training. So often what we do is we just send it out to the current officers and hope that they'll inform the incoming officers, which doesn't necessarily work. What I have done when I was division director was I contacted every club and said, have you had the training? Or have you had your elections? If so, send me your list of new officers. If not, you need to have your training. And made sure that I got the list of officers from every club, and then I invited those officers specifically rather than it just hoping that it will filter down through the current officers. And I think that that tends to be somewhat more successful in getting people out. It still certainly doesn't get everybody, but I think it helps in getting people out. But yes, I agree, the more that we can get people to come before their officers so that they have an understanding, better understanding of what's involved before they take on the role is good. And in some districts where they have district-wide TLIs, so where you have several hundred people coming at one time, they will have special sessions for non-officers. Our TLIs, it's more difficult to do that because we tend not to get the numbers to make it work easily.
Yeah, one of the things that TD Legendary Leaders has been doing, and I would recommend it, is officer training or officers in training. You know, they're not necessarily an officer of the club, but they say, hey, for anyone who's interested in taking on a role as officer coming into the next election year, they shadow with the person they might be interested in, such as the VP PR, VP marketing, and they spend a little bit more time with them one-on-one.
I mean, it's something that every club officer could do is have a committee to help them with their role. if we encouraged committees more and people figured out how to get committees to work and whatnot. I mean, it's not easy, it takes work, but that would then help identify new leaders a little bit better. They would have familiarity with the role and everything. Linda mentioned about training being 3 months after the officers have taken place. Linda, that's really up to the division director. Here in DNF, we have our training in June, and they don't take, so they don't take office until July 1st. So they are trained before they take office. And I know some of the other divisions do it in June as well, but that's up to the division director. It has to be done by the end of August. But we've traditionally done it in June because for one reason, a lot of our clubs don't meet after the end of June. So if we don't get them by the end of June, we don't get them. Maybe you need to talk to your division director about ensuring that the TLI is held earlier.
I think that's a good idea that Tom had. The other thing, Heather, and I don't know if it's viable or not, I was going to make a suggestion, and it may be hard to maintain, but if we got the ball rolling, it could become part of the club, is in our club, I can't speak for anybody else, about once a year we ask everyone if their goals are being met. And for the most part, they are. But if we did that when people first came in, if we did it again, like 3 times a year, and then find out if they were losing interest in the club, then we could pick them up before we lost them, or at least we would find out why they were leaving.
Yeah, and I mean, at the start of the year, the VPE should be finding out what everybody's goals are, and then monitoring that to see whether they're staying on track with it. But encouraging people, I mean, you know, back to sort of the issue of the quality club. I mean, to me, one of the big criteria is people preparing in advance. I know somebody who says that what Toastmasters does is it just teaches people to do things on an impromptu basis well. I mean, how often do you walk into a club meeting where the Toastmaster is getting the introduction from the speakers, or there is no introduction of speakers, or half of the roles are filled as people are walking in? You know, you can't be prepared for a role if you don't know that you have it. So we have to ensure that, to the extent possible, roles are filled in advance. I mean, I know that there's always going to be some last minute changes because things happen and people can't make it or whatever. But, you know, we also have to ensure that people are prepared in advance. You know, when's the last time that an evaluator contacted you as a speaker to find out what project you're doing and what your own personal goals are? I mean, that's something that they should be doing as an evaluator. But are we encouraging that in the club? You know, we have to make sure that we're setting an expectation that there is preparation to be done, not just when you're a speaker, but when you're taking on any role. There is preparation that you need to do in advance of coming to the meeting. When people are prepared, then the meeting runs more smoothly, and then it's actually easier to inject some fun into it when everybody knows what they're doing. But when people are stressing over, what do I do now, or what am I going to do because this isn't, and you know, or the whole meeting seems disorganized. I mean, if the meeting seems disorganized, guests aren't going to think that it's a good thing to do. But, you know, members aren't going to feel as comfortable with it as well. But we need to set that expectation for our members. I mean, I hear a lot of, oh, you know, it's so hard to get somebody to do an icebreaker, for example. I mean, we have an expectation in our club that somebody's going to do an icebreaker within the first couple of weeks of them joining. It doesn't always happen, but 90% of our new members do an icebreaker within 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think, Heather, it's really interesting that you bring up fun and preparation in the same sentence. Because as I was listening to Shane talk in the beginning, I was trying to understand which way the conversation was going to go. It has to be one or the other, and the answer is it doesn't have to be. It can be both, and I think you're bringing up some really good points that if you are prepared, you're not scrambling. If you're not scrambling, you're going to have more fun. And one of the things that I did this in our club did this a couple times where we were having a barrel of laughs one time, and we just asked. We said, "Is this the type of meeting that you want?" And we actually talked about the types of meetings that you want, and can we still have fun? And hey, I've seen other clubs where they are by the book and very regimented in how they go. Is that who we want to be? And a lot of the feedback was, no, we want to continue to have some fun, but to your point, we need to be a little bit more prepared. So it's, just as we would go out at the end of each year saying, is everyone achieving their goals? What do you want to achieve? We should be periodically talking about the quality of the meeting, saying, is this what you, the base, really want within the club? And do you think this is what guests would want? And I think that comes back to Shane's original question of, are the people who are kind of peering in through the door, do you think this is something that they would want too? I think it's worth asking.
We invariably get as feedback from guests that the meeting was more structured than they expected, but they liked the fact that it seemed to flow seamlessly. And they say, well, it was more structured than I expected, but it was also more fun than I expected.
Cool.
So the two can go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We seem to have been doing a fair bit of talking here. Do others have suggestions for what you can do for having quality club meetings?
Don't be shy.
I think sticking to the agenda. At our club, we've had a lot of new members join us recently. And we stick to our agenda, but we also make it fun. And that's been one of our greatest feedbacks with all of our guests, and all of our guests have become members, is that we stay on track with our meeting and stay on track with the agenda, but it's also fun, it's inviting, everybody's, super helpful to each other. And one of the greatest comments we get is that everybody is just so nice and helpful.
Yeah. And we get the same type of feedback. And, I always find that people seem to think that you've got to do kind of like weird and wonderful things to make your meeting fun. Oh, you've got to change it up and do this and everything. But if you have different table topics every meeting, that one time it's speaking to a quotation, another time you're trying to sell something, another time you're being another character, another time you're telling a story, whatever, that adds fun to it. The fact that, to me, I wouldn't call it fun, but what makes it enjoyable are the various topics that people come up with for speeches. So, if you always have several, 2, 3, 4 speakers at a meeting, you're going to learn from those, but it's also going to be entertaining because of the different topics that people choose. So, just by following the meeting and having a well-run meeting, but you get your differences through people's different approaches to things. I don't think you need to really do a whole lot of different types of things to ensure that people are enjoying themselves. And maybe to me, it's more about enjoyment rather than, you know, kind of what we may traditionally think of as fun. Okay.
Thank you for your thoughts, Heather. We have to move along. I'm not cutting anybody off. We can interject comments at any time. So we're going to the next slide now. Any more comments about this or not? We're moving along.
Well, I guess I would say, you know, fun should be defined by what the club defines as fun. You know, I've been to meetings where there was a joke master, and you know, it's not every club has it. And the times that I've seen it, in a lot of cases, it was very forced. You know, to Heather's point of people weren't prepared, or they came in scrambling saying, oh yeah, I forgot I was the joke master. And then they picked something up off the internet very quickly. You know, fun is really, you know, feeling good about yourself at the end of it, feeling loose enough that you can give it, you know, that you're willing to step up into table topics. You know, when it comes to defining fun, again, it comes back to the club's leadership to make sure that they're having conversations about how they define fun and what they consider fun activities, and you know, what the people that the core group, the base, and what they want to do when it comes to having fun.
Sounds great. Okay, moving on.
Sorry. It's Shane here. I think that what Tom's alluding to is being prepared. Pre-meeting preparation is key to a successful meeting. Having those roles filled out and ensuring that the member knows and it's expected that the member doesn't just show up and go, oh darn, I forgot that I'm supposed to do the jokes master today, and they crank out a joke somewhere or somehow. The speakers, they need to be prepared. They can't just walk in and crank out a speech off the top of their head and say, well, there you go, that's all I've got. They need to take ownership of their role as well. I think the key message I'm getting here is that everybody in the club takes ownership of the club.
Any other comments? Sounds great, Shane.
Just to echo the ownership part, it's one of the things that Lance Miller talked about as to one of the reasons that clubs fail is that nobody takes ownership, and they don't take ownership through preparation. They don't take ownership through, you know, it's always, well, we'll let somebody else find new members, whatever. So that ownership is an important aspect of it.
Every member is responsible for finding new members. We may have a VP membership and a VP public relations. They're the coordinators, but it's up to us, the members. We own the club. It's our club. So it's up to us to ensure that our meetings are top quality.
And I think you bring up a really good point when you bring up, you know, the VP marketing, VP membership, and coming back to the conversation earlier about TLIs and setting the expectation. We also have to be cautious in the messaging too, especially newer officers, that you're not bottled in or boxed in to that role. You know, all club officers are there to help each other to have the club grow and be sustainable and make sure that everyone is beating to the same drum if they need to. And I think sometimes when you sign up for this, you know, even secretary, treasurer, you think that you have a very siloed expectation to what you're doing, but the reality is all club officers should pitch in to do whatever it takes to ensure that club is successful. And I think if we continue to message that as we go through this WOW program and integrate it into our training and integrate it into our communications, I think people will understand that, being a club officer is just making sure that everyone in the club is happy, everyone in the club is productive, and everyone in the club is helping to move to reach their individual goals, but also the club goals themselves.
I agree.
So to go back to the meeting itself, it's incumbent upon the club officers to be prepared. It's incumbent upon the membership to be prepared. Everybody who takes on a role prior to the meeting must be prepared. Evaluators need to review the evaluation sheets and talk to the speakers. They can't just show up 5 minutes before and say, yeah, what's your speech about? And, give me a little bio. And I know all clubs do it. Everybody's a busy person, and well, you know what? It just gets left to the last minute. Don't think that Pepsi or Coca-Cola would allow that sort of behavior with their brand. And we are talking about a brand. Toastmasters International is a brand for McDonald's. So how do we maintain a lighthearted and yet learning situation for all Toastmasters? Another issue that comes to mind is that some people want to talk about personal beliefs, religious beliefs, personal beliefs, etc. And the speeches could get a little dry. So how do we improve on that? How do we ensure that while we are talking about some really dry topics, for instance, one year we had a professor in chemical engineering give us a great topic on something about chemical engineering. Didn't have a clue as to what it was about, but it was a great speech, and it created lively discussion afterwards. So
yeah, I'll let others speak. I've been doing too much talking to.
So it's not that every speech has to be a fun and popular and topical. Talking about bicycle laws in New Brunswick, Canada could be a little not on topic for you, so we have to be a little bit lenient or a little bit understanding as the audience.
Yeah, well, but Shane, I think to me, that's just a given. If somebody wants to talk about urban planning, it might be something that I'm not particularly interested in, but if they're interested in it, it can still be informative for me. But we're there to help them deliver their message clearly. So if you couldn't understand what this person was talking about with the chemical engineering or whatever, maybe he needs to learn to deliver the message, and a lot of scientists do need to learn to deliver their message in a way that more people can understand it. So, you listen to it, you give them feedback, you give them the opportunity to present it again. That's why we say it's a safe place to fail. It doesn't matter if you mess up, you get a chance to succeed the next time. And, but what I like about the fact is that, yeah, some of these topics are topics that I don't have any particular, they're not something I would speak on, but it's still interesting to hear what other people have to say on it. And if they give a very dry presentation, well, then that's where the evaluation comes in to give them suggestions on how they can make a rather dry topic understandable to people so that it doesn't seem quite so dry. If somebody's not interested in public speaking and that's what we're talking about, they're not going to find the topic particularly entertaining either.
So maybe
right,
that's
exactly. We had. Go on.
Sorry, Shane. Carolyn. Maybe that's when part of the planning meeting is when they do the table topics and you know the subject is going to be serious, that you make the table topics more fun. So like to buffer that around it.
That's a good idea.
One of the things,
we had
sorry.
We had one speech. One of our members gave a speech on the role of the American eagle in the St. John River ecosystem. Really dry topic, but you know, when it came time for the evaluation, her evaluator didn't talk about the content. She discussed her presentation style, etc. So my point is you can't, as an evaluator, you can't just stand up there and say, wow, dude, I really don't have a clue as to what you're talking about. You give a positive and upbeat evaluation. That brings our guests and our members back.
Okay, moving on to the next slide. Shane, it's Carolyn. It's Carolyn. One of the things that we do is, if, as an example, we have speakers and one, for whatever reason, doesn't show up, we have access to the international competitions through videos. So we pick a video, or it's picked before the club meeting starts. We all review it, and we're all given evaluation sheets. We do the evaluation, and then we discuss it. So it's a learning process as well as filling time, for lack of a better word. And reverse meetings can be fun. It's hard on the brain for people who have an organized brain, but if you do a reverse meeting and have your ending and go completely through the meeting, it's an exercise in how to focus in a different way. And you wouldn't do it often, but you can do it a few times a year. The same way with theme meetings, because theme meetings are a lot of work, but if we pick a theme and it's something that we can invite the community to, as an example, sales. So there's a lot of car dealerships in the area near my club, and we could tell them or put speeches together and ask the community to come and see what they think of it and if it helps them at all. Anybody else?
Okay, and speaking to the first one, they identify the most important elements that satisfy club members. And we were just talking a little bit about evaluation. I mean, I think that's an important thing as well when we're talking about club quality, that we need to ensure that the evaluations are effective evaluations, that we're giving useful feedback to the speakers, not just doing a whitewash, because you're not helping the speaker any when you just say, oh, you know, you did this well and you did this well and you did this well, and you don't give them any suggestions for improvement. And you know, I mean, I've seen it sometimes with brand new speakers that they get an evaluation that just tells them that they're a wonderful speaker. And I mean, I'm always thinking, they've got to be thinking, then why am I here? But if we don't have quality evaluations, it takes away from the overall quality of the club meeting.
Yeah, Heather, one of the things we did at KVTM, and give a lot of credit to our officer group at the beginning of the Toastmaster year last year, is they focused on evaluation. And a lot of the things that they had talked about was, we're too nice. And for the better speakers, they're saying, you haven't told me anything. You haven't given me anything to walk away with. And so we really spent a lot of time on the quality of the evaluation and the usefulness of the evaluation, and were they able to walk away with something. And I think that helped not only the speaker, I think it helped the evaluators more to really take a breath and say, okay, I don't have to just, to Shane's point, if it's a dry topic, to just regurgitate what I just heard. The reality is, let's talk about what you did well, your voice inflection, your gestures, your organization of the speech, and then what you can work on. So I think that is just as important as part of the wow factor when it comes to organizing the meeting, is to make sure that the evaluators are not only prepared going in, but that they're comfortable to provide some critical feedback to someone, especially when it comes to the more experienced speakers that you have.
And a suggestion that can help with that as well, to make people more comfortable with the evaluation process. Well, one thing that I really like about Pathways is that you get people doing evaluations early, because I found that in some clubs before, people had to wait so long when the club had a rule that, you know, was never in TI anywhere, that says you have to have 5 speeches before you can do an evaluation. By that time, people were afraid of doing evaluation. Now, with it being in the second project in level 1, it encourages them to do it. But one thing that, you know, clubs could consider doing, if you do have a meeting where perhaps you only have 1 speaker, do the regular evaluation, then do a roundtable evaluation, and let everybody have the opportunity to speak to how the speaker did. That not only helps the speaker, because they're getting a lot more viewpoints, it helps everybody in the evaluation, thinking about evaluation, because when somebody comes up with a point that you hadn't thought of, it's like, oh, I never thought of looking at it that way. And it may help you in future evaluations. So it can really help all of the members become better evaluators by occasionally doing a roundtable evaluation. So it's a way, when you do have a sudden cancellation or something, that you could help to still fill out the agenda, while at the same time have people learning from the process.
Great, thanks, Heather.
Yeah, one of the things that I just want to add a point to that, because one of the things that our club started doing at KVTM was the speakers have actually said, and this is where you add the fun back into this, is we said, all right, evaluator, before I give my speech, it's okay to hit me square between the eyes, give me very critical feedback, and then we have a good laugh of it. And then the evaluator really starts to hone in on some of the things that you can really work on. And ironically, one of our shyer people, as he was walking up to the lectern last week, he said, and Tom, you're evaluating, hit me square between the eyes, and we had a good laugh. And you can see him just absorbing the feedback in, and I think he's going to become a better speaker because of it. And as evaluators, I think people are getting a little bit more comfortable to, it's okay to be critical in a constructive manner and balance the feedback appropriately. But, you know, that's a good example of balancing between fun and still being able to have it be a productive meeting.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Tom. Linda has a question about the order of the meeting. One club I visited gives prepared speeches first, then introduces the evaluator, and table topics, then evaluation. Is the order of the meeting important? The roles of the Toastmasters something that should be consistent? Anybody?
I would like to speak to that. It's something that, if you follow the Toastmasters Facebook group, this comes up on a regular basis. And there are people that will say, oh, you cannot possibly control the timing of the meeting unless you have speeches first. And you've got to allow your evaluator, so you have speeches, then you have table topics, and then you have evaluations, because you've got to allow the evaluators all that time to prepare. My response to that is always, it's up to the club. Whatever meets the needs of the club. I belong to one club. It's an advanced club. We do the speeches first because we focus on evaluation. Every speech does get a roundtable evaluation. So sometimes there isn't time for table topics, but we say everybody is a dual member. They can get table topics in their home club. It doesn't matter. So we do the speeches first for that reason, to make sure that we have plenty of time for evaluation. In my other club, we start off with table topics. And we find that by having table topics first, it generally makes the meeting livelier. We have table topics, we have a break, we have our speeches, we have our evaluations right after the speeches. Evaluators don't have a huge amount of time, but the way we look at it is if they're going in the evaluation contest, they may not have a lot of time either. They get 5 minutes, and if they're the first speaker, that's it. They've got the 5 minutes, and that's it. So our club contestants generally do very well in the evaluation contest because I think they're prepared to do evaluations without 20 minutes of preparation. But it doesn't really matter. Other than if you're doing a backwards meeting, then I always say evaluations shouldn't come before the speeches. But other than that, it doesn't matter. It's what works for the club.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Heather. Moving on.
Carolyn, do you want to address this slide?
Okay. I've had people say to me that they don't know where to go look for ideas to do table topics or fun speeches and that sort of thing. So I started doing some investigation. There are the top line is a website. There are which opens up into many websites, including club websites, mainly in the States, and they share, as an example, the third one about the 3 speakers and how you can make meetings fun through different ideas. I have one set of one club, which is the Perpetual Toastmasters Club. They have 101 ideas for table topics. So it's out there. We just have to go look at it. We did one for charades here a few weeks ago for table topics, and the hoot of it was the person who was the table topics master was very experienced, been in the club a long time, and thought they had really hard ones to deal with. Nobody even got to a minute, and the timer started to laugh. She said, "Could somebody please get to a minute?" The longest one was 45 seconds, and that became a joke too. So that is one of many ways to do this, which has created the idea for me. Starting the next newsletter, I'm going to start doing different ideas on how to do table topics, where to look for them, and that sort of thing. Does anybody want to share what they do in their club or how they find resources to do table topics and fun speeches?
Hi, this is Paula from Bangor. What we do is, I've been table topics a few times recently, actually. I've come up with a quote, and they pick a number. Let's say I have 4 different quotes. They pick a number. I read them the quote, and they have to respond to it, whether they agree to it, whether they can take a little story from it, and it seems to have worked really well. One of our members recently, as a twist on the numbers, he had the numbers in Iranian text, and so we had to match I had the easiest one, I had 1, but we had to match the Iranian number to our numbers, and then we were given a question, and the theme happened to be friendship. And so we've had a variety of different ones, from picking something out of a pail to making a story up from that. So there are a lot of options out there.
Thank you, Paula. That was terrific. Anybody else would like to share any ideas they've done?
Yeah, Pierrette here. Maybe I can share one that you might not have done before. We put a mirror in the bottom of a bag, and you ask the person to look into the bag, and without saying or having people knowing what you're talking about, you have to talk positively about what's in the bag, and people will have a great laugh at that.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Anyone else?
I mean, there's really, it's just limited by your imagination. But one thing you can do is give people 4 unrelated words, and they can talk about whatever they want, but they have to include those 4 words. So it's then trying to create a story around the 4 words. Or another one that can be fun is you get somebody talking, and every 20 or 10, 15 seconds or so, you just throw out a word. They then have to incorporate that word into their story that they're telling. And, so you throw maybe 6 different words over the time for them to talk about. And those can be fun. But I mean, there's all kinds of options out there. And certainly if you search, you'll find all kinds of ideas on the website, on websites.
I think that may have been part of the problem, Heather, is people didn't know where to go look. So hopefully we've given people ideas what clubs do and where we can go look and find them. So that's.
I mean, if you just search topics, you're going to get a lot of hits.
Oh, that's what I did to start with.
Yeah.
So Shane,
it's Shane here. In several of my clubs, we have things called chat packs.
Yeah.
Which are table topics in a box, and we use those from time to time just to shake things up a bit. But for the most part, as Heather said, your table topics theme is only limited by your imagination. My view of the table topic is that we keep in the back of our mind that we're practicing elevator speeches. So it can be lighthearted, it can be entertaining, but we should be encouraging our table topics speakers to hit that 2 to 3 minute mark.
1 to 2 minute mark, Shane.
Sorry. I keep getting it mixed up with the evaluation. So yeah, the 1 to 2 minute mark. So just to practice talking for 1 to 2 minutes, because in this day and age, we do most of our talking through our fingers, online, texting, etc. And we tend to forget that we have a voice.
Yeah. I think it's also important to remind people when they're doing table topics that it is a mini speech, and to try to come up with a clear opening, body, and conclusion. What I find often is that if you ask people a question like, would you choose this or that? And they start with, so would you choose pancakes or waffles? And they say pancakes, and then go on to talk. My point is that if you're giving a speech on the relative merits of pancakes or waffles, you wouldn't start off with, chances are you wouldn't start off with just saying pancakes. You would have an opening. So take the time to think of an opening that's going to catch the audience's attention and engage the audience, and then build it from there. So if you remind people about them, it helps them to think about that and helps them to take that time to develop a clear opening statement. And just so we should always be reminding them that it is a mini speech. Now, there are times when you're doing something like telling a continuous story or something like that where it doesn't work because they have to just pick up where the person before them left off. But generally speaking, it should be in that format.
Are we out of time?
No, we've got a few minutes left.
So that brings us to me, in my view, this is what the general evaluator should be talking about at the end of the meeting. And the general evaluator should be commenting on the quality of the table topics and the quality of the speeches. A lot of times we say, yeah, that was a good table topic, we should do that again. But we don't really talk about, the GE doesn't really spend a few seconds talking about the type of table topic speeches.
Yeah.
Where we can
Shane, I'm going to disagree with you. It's something you said there, because you said the general evaluator should talk about the table topics and the speeches. The general evaluator shouldn't talk about the speeches, because that's why you have the evaluator. The general evaluator talks about the evaluations.
Right, I misspoke.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm wondering, does anybody have a table topics evaluator? So somebody that specifically evaluates the table topics. I mean, if you don't do that, that's something to consider. We do it, we have that role when we don't have a business meeting. And then that person has a couple of minutes to specifically comment on not only the topics, but then on how people did the topics. Was it a mini speech? Did they use the speaking area? Did they use body language? The same types of things that you would evaluate when you were evaluating somebody on a speech. The table topics evaluates the table topics participants on those sort of factors. And, you know, that's a way of, again, of giving another speaking role to somebody, but also to add a bit of variety to your meeting.
Great.
That's right.
I just want to interject one thing. Paula made a comment that 2 years ago at district conference Friday evening, they had an entertainment where a picture was put up and people had to make a story about the picture. It was hilarious and funny and quirky. So there's something else. So in the final moments, being about 3 minutes, anybody have any further comments, suggestions? Shane, final words?
Well, I'd rather hear from our guests first.
Okay.
I just want to make a little modification to what Paula said about putting up the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember one time where somebody gave us a topic. The topic is we were all presenters at a show, you know, that we had a picture that we had, and it was people were coming around judging. And we had to explain why we took that particular picture, and we were given just a title. And we had to describe the picture and why we took it, you know, that sort of thing. So it just made me think of it when she talked about showing the picture and talking about it. But just another example of anything can work.
Sounds terrific, Heather. More wonderful ideas. We can use them all and plenty more.
Yeah. You know, as a final comment, I would recommend to people that they look at the questions that were sent out with the wow factor. You consider doing the moments of truth, you know, because those are the ways that you're going to find out from your members how you're doing. You know, as executive, you can say, oh, well, we're doing just great, but your members may not share the same opinion. And by getting them to complete either the questionnaire that was given with the wow factor or by going through the moments of truth and getting people's feedback, then you're going to have a better understanding of how the members really feel about how the club is doing.
Sounds like a wonderful idea. You need to implement all of these wonderful suggestions throughout the year. Anybody have any other comments, questions, concerns, jokes? Final comments?
It's Shane here. I'd just like to do a quick wrap-up of what we've learned. We started off talking about the importance of training our club officers and having dedicated and committed club officers to the success of your club meetings. And then we got into how to run a meeting, preparation prior to the meeting, and the responsibility of each member to come to the meeting prepared to fill their role. And then we discussed some ideas for how to put some levity in table topics that don't actually have to be dry and serious. And we wrapped up with what the general evaluator should be pointing out. I think this has been a very productive discussion. And I'd like to, in the future, and we also talked about the moments of truth, which I think is the key to success for all clubs. So, anything else? Back to you, Karen.
Okay. So this concludes our webinar for today. Thank you everyone for attending and your wonderful thoughts and suggestions. And have a wonderful 2 weeks. And stay safe. And we'll see you then. Bye for now.
You know.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good
Okay,
night.
bye.
Still there, Shane? Did I lose you? Shane, did I lose you?